Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. I interview a mom named Dawn McCord. She has an awesome book called Chasing Carson, A Family's Journey Through Adolescence, Addiction, and Recovery. She shares her story with us, and she also shares a story in her book. Please give it a read. She's also a parent coach, and right now she's currently working on and a producer for a film documentary called Forest for the Trees, the truth about wilderness therapy. You're going to hear more about that actually in the episode coming up. Wonderful things here. Enjoy. Hi, Dawn. So glad to have you here today. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Beth. This is awesome.
This is awesome. We met a couple years ago at a conference. We have similar stories, just like, many of the parents who listen to this podcast, right? It's just like, oh, so I am thrilled and excited to have you here today. Where do you want to start?
Gosh. You know what? Let's start with some good. Let's start present and work backwards.
Love it.
Yeah, let's do that. So it's been 5 years since my son went to Wilderness. Yeah, he graduated in 2020. And we moved him to his aftercare program in Utah right before COVID lockdown. So he's lived in Utah now for 5 years. He's 5 years sober. It'll be 6 years sober in October. And he currently is working for an ambulance company in Salt Lake City, Utah, and he's an advanced EMT. He did a wilderness medicine course a couple of years ago, maybe going on 3 now, at Knowles in Lander, Wyoming. Because, like I said, I'm going backwards. He really got a love for wilderness medicine when he worked as a field guide for Elements, which is also in Utah, which is a wilderness program for adolescent boys. And they do have a young adult program as well. But he worked with the adolescent boys. And so he really got that taste of it with he had his WIFA and then his WIFR, which is Wilderness First Responder. And so, yeah, and he's been applying to all the different fire agencies out there in Salt Lake, around the Salt Lake area, hoping to get on so that then, and do his paramedic. So yeah, he is rocking and rolling and adulting well. I'm just so grateful for that.
Oh my gosh, that's a fun place to start. I think it brings a lot of hope and possibility to many of the parents, right? It's like, oh my gosh, okay, somebody survived, right? Not only did the kid survive, but the mom is right here and she sounds like she's survived.
Yes, I have survived.
Right?
Yes.
Yes.
And, yeah. And speaking of that, so I survived, my husband survived, we survived intact, because a lot of times that doesn't happen. True. When you're chasing a teenager and one that needs the level of care of wilderness. It's pretty chaotic and traumatic. And if you're not, as parents, on the same page-ish, you don't have to, be totally on the same page, but you definitely have to be really close. Mm-hmm. It can break you. It could break, because it's breaking you. You're both grieving individually, and then you're trying to grieve as a couple, and you really can't be there for each other, but you're both, also, needing to be there for your kid. And it's amazing. It's a miracle that marriages do survive,
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's really awesome, actually, that you just bring that up, because it's so hard. It's so hard. Oh my gosh. We learned some really good lessons during that time, just about each other and our relationship as well. It was like, oh yeah. So yeah. That's a great topic maybe to bring you back again someday about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I had one time that it was the first time that Carson, he ended up being high for 48 hours. It was his first time went from marijuana to Xanax or Xan bars. Yeah. So definitely substance use is what has led him down this path. And there's some underlying issues, but mostly his number one would be substance use disorder. I mean, he just flipped that switch on, and he went from, experimenting with marijuana at 15 to overdosing on heroin at 18. And he was a senior in high school. So, and then in between, we're chasing him, trying to run interference and And then we have times of being in rehab and thinking, okay, this is it. This is the one. And then, that would follow, he'd finish his rehab program at our local recovery center. And then you could see the kind of his resolve start to wane, and then the cycle would begin again. Or he would have a time of abstinence because let's say he's in baseball season, and then he'll reward himself after that. And then we're on a 3-week bender that leads to a crisis that leads to rehab and we just did that for like 3 years. So
Oh,
3.5.
yeah. I
Yeah.
bet that sounds familiar to many.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And that one time, that first time, I said to my husband, because my husband was kind of walking back a little bit going, well, maybe we kind of, we threw him right into rehab. He spent like his first time, 3 weeks in inpatient, and then he did partial hospitalization. Then he did intensive outpatient. And I think we had just come back from visiting, like family visit or something. He goes, well, maybe he seems to be doing well. Maybe we just, we overreacted. Maybe it's just normal experimentation. And I remember, and if my husband was sitting here with me right now, he'd go, oh, yeah. And we were standing in the driveway, just gotten out of the car, and I walk around to his side. He was driving, and I said, look. So for any parents listening right now, that Mama Bear just came out. Look, you need to get on board with this because we're hitting it hard because we're not messing around with this. And if something happens to him and you're not on board, I'm going to blame you. And that was the last conversation we had about it. We were all on board. We were just whatever it took. And we didn't give up. We didn't just say, okay, I'm just, even though we were, exhausted or whatever, we just said, okay, well, we're going for round 2 of treatment. Yeah. Okay. He survived an overdose. Okay. We're going to go, he's not coming home, and okay, now what? So we just kept on. We just kept trudging. Yeah. It's a trudging. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. That's so fascinating. What your husband said is like, gosh, maybe this is just normal teenage behavior. That is what the brain tells us. That's what our brains say to us because it's so confusing. And our brains want to, I don't know, maybe dissociate or push it away or not believe what's happening. That happened to me for sure. I remember thinking, well, like, he's going to figure it out. Or there was definitely a time of maybe, I don't know if it was denial. I'm not exactly sure what you'd call it. Maybe all those things. But that is so familiar to me. I hear that from parents. It's like, well, is this just normal teenage behavior? What do we do? What is the difference? Oh my goodness. It's so interesting how many of our brains say very similar things with our situations are so similar. The brain comes up. It's like, really? You can't be unique? I don't know. I just find that fascinating because I hear that so many times.
Well, I guess we just go by, when we were teenagers, and
yeah.
And I kept saying to myself, okay, is it because he's a boy? And my older son, experimented as well. Is it because we're raising boys? And is it, and why is my husband not taking it as seriously, especially the first time? Is it because he's one of 4 boys and he saw his older brother, climbing out of windows and shimmying down the tree? And so I kept asking myself, what is so different? Every time we'd end up in a crisis that landed him back in rehab. And I'm like, okay, what is so different from our generation when I was a teenager? What is going on? And finally, it just, by the time we got to the 3rd major rehab, and that's when we found wilderness therapy, that it's more pervasive. The drugs are more potent. They're easier to get. Nobody has to go to a seedy part of town. They can Uber their drug dealer to the house. That has happened to us. They throw it over the fence, they use, Cash App, or it's just, and
They're just living it.
I know. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just, and they're desensitized, I guess maybe because of the social media or because of video games and Netflix and such, that they think, oh, well, it won't happen to me. I'm not going to, hurt myself. I know what I'm doing, because they tell themselves this lie as well. It's just,
oh yeah,
it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre.
Yeah. I'm so glad you listed all that. That's so helpful. I was just thinking, so many times I thought, is this just what kids do?
Like they sneak out and they go do things. And why is this so different? And it plays tricks on you, I feel like, or your brain plays tricks on you. Like, yeah, I did that too. Or, maybe the husband or the dad says, oh yeah, I totally did that too. And it's like, no big deal. And we just talk ourselves out of, I know it's really tricky because some parents, maybe there is some regular teenage behavior going on. So there is that too, to really do your research, right? Don't just take our word for it's not regular teenage behavior. I think that's a very good question to be asking. I actually just did a podcast. I'm trying to think. It might have gone out right before this about how to tell the difference of what is actually regular teenage. I'm going to quote, air quotes, regular, and what isn't, and to really do your research and look into child development and try to figure out, like, for yourselves, the audience listening,
Yeah.
to really try and assess what's happening for your family. So I'll say
Yeah. Because I'm thinking, okay, well, boys are just a little bit more riskier. Maybe it was that. And girls, in air quotes too, that we tend to be, a little bit more fearful in general. I don't know. But we just found ourselves every time something would happen, standing in the middle of our kitchen going, am I in a Netflix movie? Like, what is going on? Like, some of this behavior is bizarre. Like, it is like over the top. And that's when we realized that, for our son Carson, that he's kind of just that kind of kid. He's that kind of kid that's over the top. He's the one that's climbing the tallest tree. Because we live in Indiana, so we don't have mountains, and we have hills maybe, but we tallest tree in the in the neighborhood. Or he's the one that, oh, you can get on the roof, because we lived kind of in a village in Midtown of Indianapolis, Indiana, and oh, so you can get on the roof. So he would then kind of do this parkour thing, and him and his friends, and jump from roof to roof. And I'm like,
wow.
So, I know he's just that way. Well, thank God he lives in Utah now, so he can climb mountains and do that instead of buildings. But he just was that. He is the kid. So this brings up kind of my book. So I ended up writing a book when we got him moved. So everything that I write about in the book, or now I parent coach as well, I had to learn through it all. Like I had to walk every step of it. So when I couldn't work for 9 weeks because we were all in lockdown, I wrote a book. But I had felt called to keep track of memories and take pictures and take video. And so I'm quite faithful. And my higher powers God, and he just laid it on my heart to write this book. So it's called Chasing Carson, A Family's Journey Through Adolescence, Addiction, and Recovery.
Awesome.
And it's just about a journey. If anything, I did it because I was battling so many of our family members, especially like my father, God rest his soul, but like, you just need to kick him out. I'm like, you can't kick a 16-year-old out of the house. They're a minor. You might have in your day, Dad, but you can't do it with us. I'm like, I'm be thrown in jail for neglect. Like, serious. So I wrote just all these stories. And then after a while, you stop talking to people about the stories because they're too bizarre. They're like, they don't know how to react, and it makes them uncomfortable. And it's just, just something, you just suffer in silence at times. And so, like I said, I wrote this book, and it finally was published in December of 21. And it kind of goes through, it starts out with his overdose, and then I go backwards and kind of where it all started. And then it speeds up to, okay, it's after his overdose, and now we're going off to wilderness, and we talk about wilderness therapy and all that. But part of that, before getting to wilderness therapy, that I'm realizing the difference in my kid and normal teenage behavior. And I ended up talking with some friends that their daughter was kind of going, was a little bit more riskier and going through the same thing. And my friend said, I had a psychiatrist at work tell me that, to put it simply, that there's different levels of being a teenager or an adolescent. So I'd say in my book, like, well, level 1 is the kid that says, sure, I'll try that. And then level 2 is the kid that says, which was by Carson, says, sure, I'll go buy that. And then we have the level 3 that level 2 then goes into, there might be some dual diagnosis. There's some underlying issues, or the behavior, because of the use or what have you, just gets really gets extreme. And then that's then when you have that level 3 kid that needs a level of care that you don't know about,
Right.
because especially if you're in areas of the country that don't know what residential treatment is or what wilderness therapy is.
Yeah. Well, even living in Utah with like what 2/3 of the residential treatment centers, like literally next door to me, I didn't know it, of them at all.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, they're in your back.
They're
You're
in our backyard, and I did not know of any of them. I was like, I don't know what those things, I just wasn't in my view for any
right.
reason, yet. So
Well, and so speaking of that, because then it became fascinating to me once we got into wilderness therapy. Then I'm like, there's this whole level of care. And actually, one of my friends who's a psychotherapist, she says, Dawn, it's a whole subculture. You
yes,
you don't know that it's there and you don't know that you need it until you need it, and it will find you, and it found you. So now, and she said to me, what are you going to do with that? And then that was during the time that I was writing the book, and we were just walking outside because we can only be outside, 6 feet apart. And I said, well, I don't know. I just think, this wilderness therapy is fascinating. And so definitely I want to talk more about that. In fact, the cover of my book is a picture of Carson, who I'm sure you've seen it, that
yeah.
it's him. And I had a friend, an artist friend, who did a watercolor of him bow drilling from this picture. And that's the cover of the book. And I'm like, people are like, what is that? I go, that is a primitive way of starting fire that the kids do. And that there's a reason for that they do that in wilderness. One, it builds patience.
It's so hard.
It's so hard. It's saying in my book, like, well, level 1 is the kid that says, sure, I'll try that. And then level 2 is the kid that says, which by Carson says, sure, I'll go buy that. It builds
It's
patience.
it feels impossible, yet all the kids
Yeah.
are doing it. But I've
Yeah.
tried it multiple times, and it is hard.
Yes, it's very hard. And it's a skill that they hone, and they have nothing but time on their hands. But that's one thing about wilderness therapy, is that it's all intentional. Like,
Yeah.
especially this day and age of wilderness therapy, it's all intentional. It's with the therapeutic component, and how it's, at least for the program that we went to, that Carson went to, and the one that he worked for, because he ended up, like I said, saying in my book, like, well, level 1 is the kid that says, sure, I'll try that. And then level 2 is the kid that says, which by Carson says, sure, I'll go buy that. That was a field guide for them. Is that there is, there's a curriculum, there's a reason why they do what they do. And it's just as fascinating just watching it. And part of the therapeutic model, and I think a lot of wilderness programs do this, is they write letters. So the kids write letters to us, the parents, and the parents write letters back. And there are letters that are, that are intentional for, like, huge letters, like impact letters or accountability letters, or acknowledgement letters, and then accountability letters. And there's also different things that they're built. I have not done it. It's just learning through the eyes of my son, of the stages and the mentoring. Either they're being mentored, or they're then mentoring, depending on how long they've been in the wilderness. And it is such character development that it was just fascinating to me, that I'm still in awe of it. I'm still in awe of it. That, like, I just want to be immersed in it. And
That's interesting. I feel very similarly, just so you know. I just fell in love with it. And that's fun to hear you talk about it like that, because I feel the same way. I do. So
yeah. And I've talked with, because of my book coming out, I've talked with other parents, and the same way, they're enthralled by it. It saved their kid's life. They want to do anything to be part of it. I know this family, Liz Bounds and Dan Johnson, they have the Parker Bounds Johnson Foundation. They're amazing. And their son, unfortunately, did pass away, and they've had their foundation for 10 years, I think about 10 years since he's passed away. They're still, very much involved, especially moms. I find moms were definitely a lot more involved than, it's not that the dads don't want to be. I have met another dad that is very much involved in it. And he became a parent coach as well. A couple of dads, actually, kind of think about it. But yeah, we're holding on. We're involved and we're enmeshed in it. And a lot of our kids are moved on. Wilderness worked. They moved on.
Yes. Oh, I was going to ask you, that's a perfect segue you just said, is so many of the parents I talk to, they feel like, and I'm guessing you're going to relate to this a lot, is it's not working, Beth. It's not working. Meaning, right, that the wilderness, they're not cured after wilderness, or they're not fixed, quote unquote, fixed after wilderness or after treatment. And a lot of my work, I feel like, is, especially even in this podcast, is really helping redefine the expectations of what wilderness does or a treatment place does or anything like that. So, and then just a little bit ago, you had mentioned we just kept trudging.
Mhm.
And so my question to you is, did you ever feel like this isn't working? And how did you keep going? How did you say, like, hey, you know what? Rehab again. Here we go again. Like, can you kind of maybe take us through some of that specific journey?
So yeah, that's that thing is where you don't give up. Like, well, I don't want to say that rehab's a consequence, but there are consequences to this cycle. So this is going to be
Your
our
kiddo
cycle.
was young enough so that you could be in charge of whether they went to
Yes.
rehab.
Yes.
That's handy.
Until he turned 18.
Right.
So we knew he turned 18 in March of 2019. And he was on we'll call it abstinence because it was during baseball season. So his last regular game, he decided that he was going to reward himself and he was just going to go buy some marijuana. And then he saw on Snapchat bars for sale. And this is where we knew, Houston, we've got a problem.
Yeah.
He liked the feeling of Xanax and he went for it. And then that caused a 3-week bender that led to, because he was already 18, led to an assaulting my husband, because his dad was trying to get some pills off of him. And which then led for him to go to big boy jail because he's 18 in downtown Indianapolis.
Oh, that sounds really rough. Yeah.
Yeah. And then come out, and the way and because it was assault charge and not a drug charge, she couldn't even come near us. So because of the state of Indiana, the state took over the case and said, okay, this is assault. And because of domestic violence issues, he could not be around my husband or myself or our house. So, okay, then we're scrambling because he's still a senior in high school. What do we do? So we had a criminal defense attorney, and I was letting him just do the public defender. I was letting it all play out until one of my girlfriends who works for an attorney said, hey, this is not a drug charge, it's an assault charge. I think you need to get an attorney. So the way the DA agreed that they would not put him on house arrest or keep him was that he had to go back to rehab. So he went back to rehab. Okay. So then we have the cycle of, he was the whole summer before his senior year, he's back in our recovery center. Then, the resolve starts to wane, but this is what we do. Okay. So this is definitely, we're seeing a pattern. We're seeing a cycle here. So yeah. So that's that thing is where you don't give up. Like, well, I don't want to say that rehab's a consequence, but there are consequences to this cycle. So this is then towards the end of his intensive outpatient, that's kind of how it kind of, trickles down, inpatient, partial hospitalization, IOP, level 1. He was actually in level 1, which was 1 hour a week. And he was going to meetings, and he was also doing a dual diagnosis program at our local children's hospital. And he was also he was going to work. We had talked with school, and he advocated for himself to get, just to have a lesser schedule kind of thing, because he had already really gotten all his credits because he was in a pretty rigorous school. So we thought everything was going well. Well, his counselor at the recovery center noticed that his resolve was starting to wane. We were seeing it as well. And so something was brewing. And that's when we knew, because he was 18. This is where you had said, I could keep him going into rehab because he was a minor, but now he's 18. Can't force him if he decides to use again. So we said that was a time that I had to say, as the mom, who he proclaimed himself a mama's boy, and I knew it. He just finally had to proclaim it when he, was in therapy. That, but I was the one. I was the one that had to say enough's enough. He wasn't going to take it seriously if my husband said no. And we found out later it's just because he was overly attached to me and had detached. And that's what we found out in wilderness therapy, is that he had kind of detached somewhere, which is not uncommon, but during the middle school years, beginning of high school, for whatever reason. And, he just didn't feel a connection with his dad. So I, being the one that he's really connected to, is like, I needed to say, no, enough's enough. I was the one that had to say, you can't come home. If you start using again, you can't come home. And actually, Carson just found out about this. And he goes, wait, what? You were going to let me be homeless? I said, well, if that was going to be your choice. But we said, we will help you. You have to, choose therapy. You have to choose a recovery, and we will help you. We're not going to just let you go. But my husband and I had said, if he can make that choice, like he can make that choice to, not get help. Well, then he's not coming home. And I said, well, let him have his car so he can sleep in his car. And my husband's like, no, I pay the insurance. And luckily we didn't have to go that route. He stayed at the recovery center until we found a longer program. And he said, I know I need something longer, and I know I need something different. And his counselors there said the same thing. They were all on board. So he lived there until we could find something. And he finally, thank God for the internet, he researched and found the wilderness programs. But
wow.
What?
Well, one, that you guys were able to hold a boundary there. That is so hard. I mean, I bet there's parents with like drop jawed listening, like, wow, you really told your 18-year-old that he couldn't live at home, right?
Yeah.
So that is huge. I think that's really helpful to understand. Like, you guys still have a relationship.
We do.
Yeah. He talks to you, right? You have a whole book about him, and I'm sure he signed off on that. And
he did.
So we think as parents, we think they'll never talk to us again. Right? That's tricky. So I love that that was it's not everyone's journey, but I believe it is something that people need to know that's an option. And that's an option if you mean it, and the kiddos hear it, it can actually really help.
Yeah.
Because the kiddos don't, some of them, they will test you and make sure that you're serious, but they don't really want to be homeless.
Right.
Most of them, but they think that they're going to be able to, convince you one way or another. So fascinating. Oh my gosh. One of the greatest things you just said, I think it just needs highlighted a little bit, is that you were able to hold a very tough boundary. Saying that your kiddo can't come home like at 18 is, to me, one of I bet the hardest decisions that a parent can make. I mean, I talk to parents, right?
Yeah.
I talk to parents all the time, many of them, and they're just like, and sometimes we talk about that as an option, but it's very hard for parents to take that option. But I think it's so important that, I mean, your son didn't write you off forever, right? I'm sure I don't even know how he felt. But it seemed to have motivated him in the direction that was wanted, which was like, okay, I guess I better start doing some work. Is that what you guys found?
Well, I think the overdose scared him. Because one thing about the overdose is he lost his hearing.
Oh.
So he wears hearing aids today. So it's a phenomenon with opiates. And if you're going to get your hearing back, it usually comes back within 9 to 10 months.
Oh, my heavens.
Yeah, it didn't come back. In fact, he was back he was in Utah and found an audiologist, and they did a screening, and the audiologist, who he still sees today, said, yeah, buddy, it's not going to come back. And he goes, well, and he had loaner hearing aids from my best friend, who is an audiologist. And so he's like, well, can I get good hearing aids? And now, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. And he goes, and Mom, don't feel bad. It's the consequences of my actions. It's the consequences of me using. And maybe it'll be the reminder that to not use, because,
But that's some accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's information. That says something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say that's the work he did in wilderness too, because um, he was angry, very angry. He had anger issues, as a child. And I don't know if it's all that energy that was pent up, or he was less talkative. My other one talks to your ear off. And then and he just, I don't know if he couldn't just verbalize what he was feeling, what he was thinking, and that's how it came out. I don't know.
Hmm.
But it just is what it is. And so, yeah, I don't know. I'm anxious to hear more. I still want to know some of the answers to, those questions like what made you decide? Because, even when we're driving him to wilderness, every time we stopped for, a potty break or him to smoke a cigarette, I'm thinking, this is it. He's going to run off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how am I going to react to that? A lot of times we don't want to put those boundaries in place. This is what I've learned because it's fearful.
Yeah.
And death is not an option because the worst fear is that we're going to lose our kid. And that's not an option. So a lot of times we get in their way as parents. This is what I've learned now as being a parent coach. We get in their way from their healing process because of our own fear. And it's
Yeah,
totally
absolutely.
normal. No shame, no blame. It is totally normal. It's what it goes against nature, especially for moms, to just cut their kid off. It just does. And to say whatever will be. No, that's just not an option.
Yeah.
And so kind of finding and doing my own work to where I have to be okay with what it is. And it just takes time. It just takes time to get there. You were asking before too about how just keep going, and just do another rehab and hoping that this one's going to be it is.
Yeah.
And how do I find the peace in it is, well, I guess it's more that just not giving up this one and just hoping, just having hope that this one's going to be the one. And, with wilderness, I mean, it's in him leaving. I just knew that this is all we had in us, financially, emotionally, and because he was an adult, and we were just hoping and we knew that he needed aftercare as well, because before it was even brought up to us, I was thinking in my head, I'm like, how do you go home from,
Oh, yeah.
from wilderness? Like, what does that look like? And now today, 5 years later, people are adapting and there's coaching. There's all kinds of ways you can do that. You can go home. For someone that got sick in a substance use disorder, I mean, his disease is very progressive. He needed to change people, places, and things. And that's, in the substance use communities, that's kind of huge. So I think I had said too that, it's not like he couldn't find it somewhere else, down the street from where he lives in Salt Lake City, but it's just different. So
yeah, the environmental triggers are fascinating.
Yes.
I think that was one of the best things we did for our kiddo, even though it didn't change or fix anything, but it did buy us time for sure. So
yeah, absolutely. So where are we here? So finished my book. We've been going out to Utah and visiting him, and he's doing well. Just recently, a year ago, actually, I met a young man who is from Indiana, and he went to USC for film school. And so we were on a news program together, and because he was promoting one of his short films, because he had lost his sister to an overdose, and he wrote a short film called Sometimes I Imagine Your Funeral, which is in the film festivals right now. So we were promoting together. I was now working, I went back to school. I became a parent coach, a family recovery coach. I started working at our local recovery center where we all started, and working for Family Connections program. That is a free program for families to help them navigate their loved one's substance use.
amazing.
And so we were on this program together and partnering and so on and so forth. And I said to him, if you ever want to know about wilderness therapy, let me know, and want to help me save it. And he goes, wilderness therapy, what is this? What are you talking about? And so, gave my little elevator speech, and he's like, wow, I think that if we would have known about this could have benefited, my sister.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Yeah. And he's like, again, it's that, people don't know what wilderness therapy is, or if they do now lately, they only think it's bad, like
Right.
where, oh, those are the programs that are like boot camp, or those are the programs that just snatch and grab your kid in the middle of the night. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's not it. I mean, wilderness saved my kid's life. So he read my book. He, all the way back to LA, and then he emailed me, and we've been meeting ever since. So that was last May in 24. And he's like, I think we have something here. And we started talking with other families and programs and students, former students, and field guides and historians and doctors of psychology that are big in the field of wilderness. And funny, he's calling me now. He knows.
He knows
We
we're
had
talking
that
about him.
sync. Yeah, I know. We're talking about him. He
That's
so
awesome.
yeah. And so we are to the stage now that we have other filmmakers, we have people that have agreed to be interviewed, and we're starting the funding process. So to get this documentary going.
So it's a documentary about wilderness therapy, not necessarily your story, but just wilderness therapy in general, and maybe bringing out some of the like actual truths of wilderness therapy. Is that right?
Right. And we want to be objective. I know that there are families that did not have a good experience. There are accidents that did happen. There are deaths that have occurred, and there are bad actors everywhere. There was in the 90s, I've learned that there were some, like on Netflix right now, there's Hell Camp. And that had to do with a man that probably started out with a good heart and wanted to help kids, but then it just took it too far, and he had a death in his camp. So, and then it's just fearful. And then that's taken on part of cancel culture. Let's not just weed out the bad actors, but let's take down the whole industry.
Let's get everybody. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we want to be objective. We're trying to find families that would want to talk to us that did not have a good experience, or, for whatever reason. And it's been hard to kind of find people, but we want to be objective. And so we just want, that's why we're trying to get, the history. And we want to tell people about what wilderness therapy is, how it evolved, how there was, it's kind of gone in waves, where it is today, how it's an option.
Who it's good for and who maybe it isn't good for, right?
Right. And it's some, that's why we have assessing counselors that will, tell if a child would be a good fit for wilderness or not. And then I know they're doing research and they're collecting data, meaning the programs, and trying to, they evolving, and they're self-regulating themselves. And, with the OBH Council, which is Outdoor Behavioral Health Council. And this is stuff that I've just learned over the past, 5 years as I've written my book and I've met more people and now starting this documentary. It's not something to be feared. It's a good thing. Nature is good. That's one thing we can all agree on, is that nature is good. It's very healing, and we need it more than ever now.
Oh, I love that. I feel very strongly about that last comment. Nature is healing, and it did wonders for our son too. So and I know we're not everybody, right? And I know that some people obviously had a pretty hard or terrible experience, and I'm so sorry for that. Oh,
yes.
Right. And yet it is good for many. So, in fact, I've even said, like, I wish all my boys could have gone. I mean, which is a little interesting. But and one of our sons did go back, and he was a wilderness guide. One of them,
okay,
our kiddos' brothers.
Okay, one of his brothers. Okay, so that's I've talked to other people too that have sent multiple kids to wilderness. And I would want to. I think I should send my older son. He's 26 now. And I know there's adult camps that he could go to, but even for a 10-day or something like that, it's just, oh my God, it's character defining. It's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, I love it. Oh, Dawn, I'm so glad to have you here today. Will you help people? Well, first, how do they find your book? How do they find you? And then maybe a little bit of information about the movie as well,
Sure.
the documentary.
Yep. The book is Chasing Carson, A Family's Journey Through Adolescence, Addiction, and Recovery. And you can find it on Amazon. The documentary is called Forest for the Trees, The Truth About Wilderness Therapy. And you can find us at wildernessdocumentary.com.
Great.
And yep. And then there's a whole bunch of information on there. There's a contact form. You can get a hold of me that way. You can join our newsletter, so on and so forth. We have social media now. We have a Facebook page, and we also have Instagram page. So, and like I
Great.
said, we're at the funding stage. So if anybody out there, would like to help us, there's a way to donate through a 501c3 or there's investment opportunities. We're also looking at grants as well.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, I just found out about the documentary maybe about a month ago, and I was thrilled. I was just excited to have I guess, hopefully, like you said, a bit of an objective take on the field and all the different ways it can help. So.
Yes. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I just really appreciate your time.
Oh, thanks for having me, Beth.
All right. You take care. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.